people see me with my dogs, and they often ask me how they are so well behaved. How did I train them? Where did I send them? And I explained that, I just sort of took a common sense approach to the whole thing. And people often, when they part ways with me, when they say, oh, well, I wish my dogs, were that well behaved and such as this. And I always want to say something back to them, but it really doesn't seem like the right time. But if I could have, this is what I would say. If you want well-behaved dogs, you needed to start with well-behaved puppies. And I think that is the problem. People don't want to discipline puppies. They're so cute and this, that, and the other. People don't want to put necessarily all of that time and attention into it. But I will warn you now, if you have a puppy or if you're thinking about getting one, consistency is the key to training an animal, to raising a dog. I don't have children, but if I had children, I think I would say the same thing. Consistency and predictability. Dogs crave it, and they appreciate it. And the best thing that you can do for a dog is to provide it. What I mean by consistency is if you have a rule, that rule must be absolute. There cannot be times in which that rule doesn't apply because the dog doesn't understand that. For example, if a dog cannot jump up on you, there can never be a time when the dog can jump up on you. If you are excited to see the dog, then you need to get down to the dog's level. If you confuse the dog, then he or she is not going to learn the rule, and you're going to be frustrated, and then you're going to be yelling or perhaps punishing the dog physically, such as this, when you are the one who has set up the problem. Let me start with potty training, always the big problem. And I will say that I didn't have a big problem with potty training either of my dogs. I have two. I've had three, so I'll say all three of my dogs, because I used a crate. And I understand that people have an emotional reaction to crates. They look like prisons and they look cruel and unusual. But let me explain what I've come to understand about dog psychology, if you will, and crates. Dogs come from wolves. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Nobody will argue with that. Dogs come from wolves. Wolves and dogs like confined spaces. They like the safety of a den, and that's why wolves have dens, where there are a small space with 4 walls, 3 walls, and a roof, and there's not a whole lot that can happen in there, and that's the safety. A crate, if you put it up in the right way, is that space, and you don't have to force a dog to get into it. I speak from experience, 3 dogs in a row. You set up a crate and leave the door open, and that is a safe space, and you put in something that the dog likes in there, like a blanket or something that smells like the dog or smells like yourself, because the dog wants to be with you. That's the whole point. You put in a little blanket in there, and you will find that the dog will go in there all by himself. And you can give him a little treat when he's in there, and you can pet him when he's in there, and that becomes his space. And the dog will go in there when you aren't even at home if you leave the door open. If it's important for you to confine the dog to that part of the house when you're not away, so that you know that nothing's getting chewed on and nothing's getting messed up with little pet messes, then you can close the door for sure. But the point is that the crate is always there. I'm going back to consistency. The crate is always there. It's always in the same place, and it's always a safe place. I will tell you, when I decided to take the door off of the crate for my dog, I would come home from a day's work, and the dog at that point had already been potty trained. And let's say, for example, a plant had been eaten and strewn about the living room. And I come home and I'm upset naturally, and I, react, because that's the way we all do. And I'm yelling and something, and I'm mad. And the dog sees that he's going to be punished, and he runs upstairs and gets into the crate. Okay, well, the rule is the crate is your safe place. And again, it goes back to consistency. If the crate is the safe place, then it's always a safe place. And if you can get up there before I get to you, then you're fine. And no harm, no foul, and nothing's going to happen to you. Which brings me to the next point. I walk my dogs off leash. And they walk a few steps ahead of me, and when I want them to come back, they come back to me. And people are always amazed by that. And again, it comes down to consistency and expectations and safe assumptions on the part of the dog. Never, when a dog has approached me, has the dog been punished? And I think that's the point. If you hear your name, if you're my dog, if you hear your name, it means I want you to come to me. And if you come to me, you will get petted and nice things will be said to you and you might even get a treat. And that's the way it goes every single time, no matter what. If you run off and do something bad, if I feel that you need to be punished, then I will not say your name. And then you will be punished. But if you hear your name, everything is okay. And you can come to me, and whatever you have done, you'll be forgiven for, and you'll be patted on the head, and, you know, nice things will be said to you, and you might get a treat, and all this. And that's the way it always has to happen. And you're the one training the dog, and so you have to rein in your own emotions and not forget that the dog runs off to chase a cat, and you yell the dog's name, and you say, you know, Fluffy or whatever, Fluffy, you better get back here. And the dog comes back to you, and you smack it on the nose, or you spank it on the bottom or something. That is sending that mixed message that nobody wants to get. That I'm going to dread returning to you because when I do, I'm going to be punished. It's approach avoidance. It's like you don't want to touch the hot burner on the stove, but you know you've been told to, so you better. But then when you do, it's going to hurt. That doesn't make any sense, and dogs don't get trained that way. So I can say it for the 8 years that I've had my dogs. I can say with all sincerity that never has one of my dogs been called to me and then been punished for anything. And it works. I have saved my dog's own life, the dog running after a squirrel and about to cross the street because the squirrel crossed the street, and me yelling the dog's name one time, and the dog stopped in its tracks, turn around, and come back to me because that's the rule, because something good is going to happen, and then dogs want something good to happen. They can learn, and it's cause and effect and all such as this. It's a simple matter of consistency, and that's where most people, myself included, of course, fall down when it comes to training dogs. Whatever is going to happen has to always happen, and there cannot be exceptions, and there cannot be exclusionary criteria, because the dog doesn't understand that. Crate training, food. Food is another matter. My dogs, for example, I don't like dogs that beg for food. Therefore, from the very get-go, from the moment the dog enters my house, that is not a way to get food. You will be fed in your dog bowl 2 times a day. That's where food comes from. It's up to you, of course, whether you want to give your dog scraps. I usually don't, but when I do, the scraps go into the dog food bowl because that's where food comes from. My dogs, I'm a little bit more strict than most people. My dogs are not allowed to look at me when I'm eating. I don't think that's appropriate because the next step is then begging. So it's a simple matter of reminding the dogs if they're looking my way and I'm at the dinner table eating, that they need to go somewhere else, and they do, because they know that there's no way that any food is going to come of it for them. If they want food, they need to look at their bowl because that's where food comes from. And again, it's not so much what the rule is, but the consistency of it, because my dogs are 8 years old, and never in their lives has food come from anywhere but their dog food bowl. So there's no reason for them to imagine that it would ever come from the dining room table. And that's how good behavior is set up. And that's how good behavior is rewarded. Of course they can have treats. Of course they can have good things to eat. But they come from one place. And that's, again, something that the dogs can rely on, can predict, and can depend on. And that's how you get well-behaved dogs. So I would suggest, whatever your rules are, or how you want to train your dog, that the rules that you choose are not nearly so important as your own ability to maintain those rules. You're the one who made the rules, and you have to enforce them. And if you're not able or capable of deciding what is allowable and what is not allowable and following through on that, then you can't expect to have well-trained dogs. Again, I don't have any children, so I won't dare say whether or not that rule applies to human babies as well, but it certainly applies to animals.